I want you to meet Diego and Mateo. They're both 31, they live in the same city, and they both earn exactly $65,000 a year. After years of responsible financial choices, canceling subscriptions they didn't even remember having, and convincing themselves that home coffee tastes just like the coffee shops, they've both managed to save exactly $73,000. Financially, they're identical. But 20 years from now, one of them will have almost $150,000 more than the other. Not because of luck, not because of some genius investment, because of a single decision they both made the same month at 31 without really understanding what they were choosing. Stay until the end because this number is going to make you rethink every dollar you spend on where you live. Diego values stability. He wants a place that feels completely his, a yard he can obsess over, and the freedom to knock down a wall without asking anyone's permission. Mateo is different. He values freedom of movement. He doesn't know where he'll be living in 5 years, and the idea of committing to the same address for 30 years makes him more anxious than he'd ever admit out loud. Those two personalities lead them to two completely opposite decisions. Diego buys a house, Mateo keeps renting, and over the next 20 years, we're going to track every payment, every rent increase, every surprise repair, and every dollar Mateo invests instead of spends. By the end, you'll see what the exact same starting point turned into. Diego finds the house after months of searching. 3 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms, a small yard, and a garage big enough to store exercise equipment he'll never actually use. The house costs $320,000. With a 20% down payment, that's $64,000, leaving him a mortgage of $256,000. But the down payment isn't all he needs. There are closing costs, lender fees, appraisal, title insurance, and about 40 documents he signs without understanding half of them. Those costs usually run between 2 and 5% of the purchase price. For this comparison, let's say Diego's come to $9,000. So before he even moves in, Diego has already spent his full $73,000, $64,000 on the down payment, $9,000 on closing costs. He takes out a 30-year fixed mortgage at 6.75%. His monthly principal and interest payment comes to about $1,660. Add $300 in property tax, $130 in home insurance, and another $267 he sets aside each month for maintenance, roughly 1% of the home's value per year. His total monthly housing cost is $2,357. Meanwhile, Mateo rents a comparable place for $1,750 a month, no property tax, no home insurance, and if the water heater decides to die on some random Tuesday, that's the landlord's problem, not his. That leaves Mateo an extra $607 a month. For a second, that money starts looking like a plane ticket to somewhere with a beach, but Mateo resists. He puts his $73,000 into a broad market index fund, and from that month on, the $607 left over every month goes straight into the same investment. This is where most people get it wrong. They say, sure, but Mateo is flushing his rent money down the drain, while Diego's mortgage is building equity. Technically, that's true. The problem is that in the early years, that mortgage builds equity painfully slowly. In his first payment, Diego puts $1,440 toward pure interest, $300 toward tax, $130 toward insurance, and $267 toward maintenance. Out of his $2,357 monthly payment, only $220 actually builds equity. The other $2,137 is simply the cost of owning a house. Mateo pays $1,750 in rent that builds nothing. But calling rent money thrown away while ignoring that interest, taxes, and repairs aren't investments either is creative accounting. Let's fast forward 3 years. Diego has already learned the first lesson of home ownership. Every strange noise now has financial consequences. One Saturday, the water heater stops working. After a YouTube video and 3 hours of frustration, he calls an actual plumber. It costs him $380, exactly the kind of expense he'd been saving for. After 3 years, Diego's mortgage balance has dropped from $256,000 to $247,300. He's paid down just $8,700 in principal. If his house appreciated at 3.5% a year, it's now worth roughly $355,000, giving him about $108,000 in equity. That's real wealth. Mateo, meanwhile, has paid $63,000 in rent over those 3 years, but his initial investment at 9% annual return is now worth about $94,500, and adding what he's invested every month, his full portfolio is around $117,000. So after 10 years, the result is surprisingly close. But notice something: Diego can paint the living room whatever color he wants. Mateo can move next month without calling anyone. As the years pass, their costs start moving in very different directions. Diego's principal and interest payment stays fixed, but his property taxes rise as the home's value rises. Insurance goes up, and the older the house gets, the more ambitious the repair bills become. Mateo, on the other hand, has one expense that rises every single year: rent. He starts at $1,750. The next year, it's $1,820, then $1,893. Apparently, his landlord also believes in compound growth. With rent climbing 4% a year, the $607 monthly advantage Mateo started with slowly starts to disappear. And this is where time starts working in Diego's favor. His principal payment stays frozen while Mateo's rent keeps climbing every January. But Mateo still has one massive advantage we haven't fully counted. His original $73,000 has been growing in the market this whole time. And that brings us to the single most important factor in this entire comparison: opportunity cost. At 9% annual return, that money has the potential to multiply several times over across 2 decades before counting a single extra dollar of monthly investing. Jump with me to year 10. Diego is 41. His house, appreciating at 3.5% a year, is now worth roughly $451,000. After 10 years of payments, he has $218,400 left on his mortgage, giving him about $233,000 in equity. He walks around his property with the confidence of a man who owns nearly half of every brick. Mateo, meanwhile, keeps investing. His original investment alone, at 9% a year, is now worth about $173,000. Add 10 years of monthly contributions, and his total portfolio is around $243,000. So after 10 years on pure net worth, Mateo comes out ahead, but his wealth is much easier to touch. Diego can't sell 8% of his kitchen, not without raising some awkward questions from a buyer, and Mateo still carries a cost that never disappears: rent. After 20 years of 4% annual increases, his original $1,750 is now nearly $3,800 a month. Diego only has 10 years left on his mortgage. Mateo's rent has no expiration date. But Mateo's result depends on one condition almost nobody actually keeps. He had to invest the difference every single month for 20 years, no exceptions. When the market goes up, you invest. When it drops 30%, you invest. When the news announces the end of the financial system for the 4th decade that year, you invest. The plan always works on a spreadsheet. Humans almost never. The money that was supposed to be invested becomes a nicer car, a few vacations, a slightly more comfortable lifestyle, and 10 years later, the portfolio that looked perfect on paper never actually made it off the paper. A mortgage, on the other hand, forces you to save without asking permission. Diego doesn't decide every month whether he feels like building equity. The bank already made that decision for him, and in behavioral terms, that's worth more than it sounds. But buying has its own cracks. The first is time. If Diego had sold after 3 years, closing costs going in, selling costs going out, and interest-heavy early payments would have wiped out most of his advantage. Buying needs time for the math to work in your favor. The second is mobility. If both of them get an incredible job offer in another city, Mateo packs up and leaves. Diego has to sell the house or rent it out while paying rent somewhere else with a tenant who might not even cover half the costs. Then there's concentration risk. Mateo owns a portfolio spread across thousands of companies worldwide. Diego owns one house on one street in one city. If the neighborhood booms, he wins. If the local economy struggles, he can't rebalance by selling the upstairs bathroom. And finally, liquidity. If Mateo needs $15,000 tomorrow, he sells part of his portfolio and he's done. If Diego needs that same $15,000, he has to refinance, borrow against the house, or sell the whole property. So who actually won, Diego or Mateo? The honest answer is, it depends. Buying becomes more attractive the longer you plan to stay, because 10 years or more gives transaction costs time to fade and lets a fixed payment become more valuable as rents climb. Renting becomes more attractive when home prices are expensive relative to rent, when flexibility has real value to you, and when you actually invest the difference, month after month, no excuses. And it doesn't have to be one or the other. Buying a house doesn't mean you stop investing. Personal finance is rarely about finding the perfect strategy. It's about understanding what you're trading for what. Diego traded liquidity and mobility for stability and control. Mateo traded housing certainty for freedom and more money working in the market. Neither decision was automatically smart, and neither was automatically a mistake. It all comes down to two questions almost nobody asks before signing anything. How long are you actually going to stay? Because if you buy and leave 3 years later, transaction costs will punish you. And if you rent, are you really going to invest the difference? Because if you rent for 20 years and spend every extra dollar, the advantage disappears completely. So no, renting isn't automatically throwing your money away, and buying isn't automatically building wealth. Renters pay rent. Buyers pay interest, taxes, insurance, maintenance, and transaction costs. Both are paying for shelter. The real difference, 20 years later, was never who bought and who rented. It was who actually stuck to their plan, month after month. If this video made you rethink your next housing decision, hit like right now, because the next video breaks down the #1 mistake people make once they do decide to buy, and you're probably already making it. Subscribe so you don't miss it, because next time we run these numbers, they could be yours.